how to ride. We'll teach you. Like a panther. Yes, go, stop. Go, stop. Go, stop. Go, stop. Like a panther. 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 Find other panthers. Make baby panthers. You're free to roam the dune sea. Go like a panther. 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 Go, stop. Go, stop. Go, stop. Go, stop. Like a panther. 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 Find other panthers. Make baby panthers. You're free to roam the dune sea. Go like a panther. Like a make baby panthers. Like a panther. Like a panther. Go like a panther. 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 Like a make baby panthers. Like a panther. Free to roam the dune sea.
And we're back. So obviously, because of our Star Wars intro, you guys know that tonight we're talking all about Star Wars. This is going to be a State of the Star Wars live stream, talking about every aspect of the franchise, from movies to TV shows to books to comic books to theme parks to the company behind the making of Star Wars, all this stuff. And I'm really excited to welcome in my expert panel. But before we get going, just want to remind you guys to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, really helps us out with the algorithm. I am Matthew Kadish, your host for tonight's stream. And with me today is Odin, the Allfather. How you doing, buddy?
I'm still laughing from that video. That just had me.
That was bad.
It was so good. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I'm doing well though, man. Thanks for inviting me on. Excited to talk about some Star Wars and about whether or not things are really still relevant these days. I think that video kind of gives us an early indication of where things really are though in Star Wars.
Yeah, Odin, you know, it's kind of funny because you and I met because of our shared hatred of The Last Jedi back in 2018. I had written some articles, you featured them on your YouTube channel, and we've been kind of like friends and collaborators ever since. And it's great to have you on the live stream tonight. I know you've been on before, but it's been a while since, you know, you're hanging out with all the muckety mucks over at Nerdrotic and Geeks and Gamers. So thank you for slumming it with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, I had fun with it. I love it, man. Thank you for having me back on. And dude, it's so crazy to think that back in 2018 that all that was going on. Yeah, I'm just in my YouTube brain. I'm like, it feels like it's only been 5 seconds, and then I'm like, oh no, it's been years now, and it's just.
Well, our hatred of Rian Johnson hasn't diminished at all.
No,
not at all.
If anything, it's gotten more intense.
That's what brought so many people together.
Yeah,
I mean that's how I met you guys. They all sorts of little. Just the best thing to come out of The Last Jedi.
Just like the dark side, the hate binds us together. So,
yes.
But go check out Odin's movie blog, OMB Reviews.
Yeah, it's OMB Reviews now. Everyone's like so used to the Odin's movie blog. I think there's one place where I haven't been able to change the handle yet. But yeah, it's OMB Reviews now. But you were also the one that was correct about the whole Kathleen Kennedy thing long before the more recent Kathleen Kennedy stuff. Oh yeah, I can't wait.
And the author extraordinaire himself and the guy who's running for Congress and who enjoys pissing off everyone on Twitter, Mark Huffman. Mark, thank you for being on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is your second appearance on the stream.
It is.
First time around. I forget what we were talking about, but we had a really good time, so I wanted to have you back.
We were talking about Lord of the Rings.
That's right.
Well, Amazon's bastard version.
Yeah. But you're also a physician, a medical doctor. So you're very brainy, very smart, and very insightful. And you're not afraid to piss people off, which is what I
No,
like.
I've been burning bridges.
Yeah, you like poking the sleeping wampa, I guess you could say.
Or the
And-
bantha.
Yes, or the bantha,
Like
a
a
bantha, exactly.
I'm gonna watch that for like 3 hours straight.
Every time we do a Star Wars stream, people always say like, "Kadish, I hate you," because now that song's stuck in my head for the next 3 days. But rounding out today's expert panel is the most knowledgeable Star Wars person that I know, my former college roommate and good friend, Chris Buchignani. Chris, thank you for being on tonight.
Yo, my pleasure, man. Thanks for letting me come back once again and pretend to be a pop culture commentator with you guys. By the way, in case anyone was interested, the font face on the subtitles on that video is Nevis. That shows you've spent way too much time doing graphic design stuff. When you watch something, you're like, oh, that's Nevis. Yeah, right. Okay.
I just want to give a quick shout out to those of us who are being joined in chat tonight. Anthony, YouTube fan, thanks for being here. Magnus Zerum, thank you, sir. Silent Unseen, good to see you. Novus Tullius, good to see you as well. Andre Anderson, JT Gunter, friend of the podcast, thank you for being here. D. Carey, 52 movies a year. Tim's Talk, guys, thank you all so much for being here in the chat tonight. Feel free to drop relevant comments as we will feature them throughout the live stream. And Bruce just joined the chat. Hail Odin, he says. Good to see you, Bruce. Thanks for coming by. So let's start off tonight's live stream by talking about Lucasfilm, the company behind the making of Star Wars. And basically, this is kind of like an ongoing thing ever since it became obvious that Star Wars is being slowly ruined from the inside out, where people talk about Kathleen Kennedy's reign as the CEO of Lucasfilm. And Odin kind of mentioned it before, where for years I've been saying that Kathleen Kennedy is not going to be fired. She's going nowhere. People say like she's just a figurehead now. She's not actually in charge. And like we are going to talk about an article that kind of disproves that already. But I've always, with my experience in Hollywood and working at Paramount Studios and stuff like that, I just know how things kind of work in Hollywood. And especially like when you factor in the fact that, woke politics plays a role as well, where you're not going to fire a powerful woman, and stuff like that. So I've always said since, I guess, 2018, since I kind of came onto the YouTube scene, that Kathleen Kennedy isn't going anywhere. She's not being undercut. She's one of the most powerful women in Hollywood. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or trying to sell you something. And Odin was actually on the first live stream I was ever on with Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. And I think I was the lone voice in that panel saying, no, that's not going to happen.
I bet that went over like a lead balloon.
I was alone on my hill with my little flag. Odin, you remember
I will
that stream?
say, I think you had because I remember the impact that it just had on Jeremy in general, and just like he still had his own thoughts, but he loved being able to hear a different perspective and also say this makes complete sense what you were saying. That stream will always go down in infamy because of other panelists.
Yeah.
There who were just
two in particular, yeah.
Yes, all over the place.
But it's kind of funny because Jeremy's only been on a Salty Nerd live stream once, and he came on to tell me that I was right, and then I've never heard from him again. So like he's never asked me to come back on and defend my position and stuff like that. But that's cool. Like he admitted that I was right, which for me is enough.
All that matters.
That's all that matters, yeah.
But yours is the dominant position. I will say that much, because especially now, because it's amazing how almost every year the same things that you were refuting back all the way back then are being brought up once again. People claiming inside sources, claiming inside information, saying the same exact thing. And there you are like, I've been saying how this is BS since 2018. And for some reason, people listen to me for a time, and then some people decide to go off on their tangents, and I'm still here saying the same thing because I'm still right. So, yeah.
Well, what's funny, Odin, is that so Kathleen Kennedy's executive contract with Disney, it has like an auto renew every 2 years or so, and so when that auto renew is coming up, people start throwing these rumors around. It's like, oh, like she's going to get fired, it's not going to get renewed or like whatever. And then it just quietly gets renewed, and people are like, oh, I guess our sources were wrong or something along those lines.
Now, have you seen this contract?
Well, I've seen other contracts like it.
Mm.
They usually renew every 2 or 3 years for Disney, and so basically, I'm just like kind of guesstimating what her contract is like because it's like a 2-year thing. But it's one of those things where unless she wants to renegotiate the contract, or Disney just like really wants to get rid of her, like, you know, she's locked in until that renewal period comes up. And I don't think she's looking to renegotiate anytime soon. I don't think Disney's looking to fire her. If you look at Disney's board of directors, the people in charge of, you know, everything, it's all very like politically aligned with Kathleen Kennedy, and so like they're not going to ever get rid of her. And I've been very adamant about my stance that she's going to be there until she retires and chooses to, like, you know, step down, and then she's going to pick her successor, and it's just going to be another version of her, essentially.
Makes the most sense.
Chris, what do you think of that? You think I'm right?
Yeah, I remember talking to you about this on the phone even before you really got into talking about it publicly, because I had started to find some of these channels on YouTube and I was interested in hearing what they had to say. I look at this from two different perspectives. As a, you know, just as a kind of disaffected Star Wars fan, it was interesting to hear all these perspectives on what might be going on behind the scenes. And I'm also more, I guess, kind of anthropologically interested in just the way modern internet culture engages with this incredibly significant, you know, culturally resonant IP and all the little subcultures and echo chambers that develop around it. So it's personally interesting to me, but then I can also step out of it and just kind of look at it from the outside and say, well, this is an interesting commentary on what we're becoming as a society as a result of the internet. But the thing that I found so fascinating about the Kathleen Kennedy's going to get fired thing is, to me, if you buy into it, I imagine it's kind of like being part of like a Heaven's Gate cult or something, an end of the world cult, where they tell you the date that the world's going to end and you're totally bought in, and then you get there and the world doesn't end, and they're like, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's not this comet, it's the next comet. And you know, we're just going to keep going back, and we're going to continue worshiping at the same altar, we're going to be doing the same things, and it'll be the next comet after this one. And for me, talking to you, Matt, and then kind of watching the way it played out, after the first time, I was like, all right, guys, like, fool me once, okay? And I feel like we've now gone through this is it, Kathleen Kennedy's going to get fired cycle at least 3 times, right? If you follow this, I feel like we're on at least number 3 now.
Well, you know what's funny is so Odin, like, you also do a political channel, and one of the things that you see is when you know, a political ideology is continually proven wrong, it kind of like course corrects and shifts. And so it's gone from Kathleen Kennedy's getting fired to Kathleen Kennedy's no longer in control of Lucasfilm. She's just a figurehead. Other people are actually running the company, and she's just there collecting a paycheck. Mark, what do you think about that idea in particular?
Well, I think people float the Kathleen Kennedy, especially people who are trying to build an audience. They know that Star Wars fans want to hear that Kathleen Kennedy is gone or is leaving. That sounds great. I mean, it's kind of wish casting, but I agree with you. She's not going anywhere. And you've probably seen me float this theory, which I actually do believe. If you look at the 3 female leads for all of the 5 feature films that that Lucasfilm is produced, they're all white brunette girls. I am convinced that Kathleen Kennedy is using Star Wars as a vehicle to do her own personal Tumblr Star Wars fan fiction.
Self-inserts?
Where, oh yeah, absolutely self-inserts. Rey is Luke Skywalker. Everything about Rey is Luke Skywalker. So that was Kathleen Kennedy saying, I want to be Luke Skywalker. Kira was Kathleen Kennedy saying, what if Han Solo was my boyfriend before Princess Leia was? I'll be Han Solo's first girlfriend. And then Jyn Erso is just, you know what if instead of Kyle Katarn, and I'm not going to talk about that, but did y'all play Dark Forces?
Yeah.
I can never forgive. I'm okay with Rogue One. It's the best thing that Disney's done, but I'll never forgive them for erasing Kyle Katarn. Who only took one level. Took one level to steal it. But Jyn Erso is just, what if me, Kathleen Kennedy, I stole the Death Star plans? Let's make a movie about that. That's my theory. She's not going anywhere. If by any metric, she is a failure. And I know Star Wars is making billions and billions of dollars, whatever, but it should make so many more billions of dollars. The return of Luke Skywalker, which obviously should happen in The Force Awakens, and I'll never understand who greenlit a script. Larry Kasdan has no excuse. J.J. Abrams has no excuse for not writing a single scene in The Force Awakens that reunites Han, Luke, and Leia. I mean, for me, that's the original sin of all of Disney Star Wars. That's insane. You start there. I mean, you've written screenplays, I've written screenplays. Mm-hmm. That's where you start, and then you build the entire plot and go wherever you want from there.
You pass the torch to the new generation.
Yeah. But they didn't give one single scene. So plot-wise, we're not good. That's an 8-hour live stream, right? Talking about the terrible plot. So that's a failure. Financially, every movie after Force Awakens should have made twice as much as it did. They should all be the top box offices of all times, and you didn't see that because they were just worse and worse and worse.
It was Star Wars fatigue that did it. People were just getting too much Star Wars.
I will tell you what, there is a super dope Star Wars toy shop and other stuff too, where I live, and they have, I don't know if y'all collected the action figures. I've got an enormous Jedi and Sith action figure collection. They have an Ulit Keldroman and Exar Kun comics 2-pack. I don't know if y'all ever read the Tales of the Jedi comics. But so this thing is $900. 10 years ago, it was $100. You couldn't find it anywhere. The state of Star Wars in 2010 and 2011 are the comic packs of characters that even big fans had never heard of were flying off the shelves, and now they're going for almost $1,000. Kathleen Kennedy has destroyed it in a way that I can't comprehend. And that being said, the fact that she's there means she will always be there.
Yeah, like creatively, she's a failure, right? I mean, like Star Wars, just by the strength of its brand and people's blind brand loyalty brings in money. But creatively, like she's done so much damage to the fan base, which used to be pretty united around their love of Star Wars. Even though like they maybe hated Jar Jar Binks or like whatever, they still love Star Wars. Now there are people who actively hate Star Wars. But I want to talk about this idea that Kathleen Kennedy is just a figurehead and she doesn't have any actual real power in Lucasfilm anymore. And there was a Hollywood Reporter article that came out a couple of days ago where it talked about the kind of controversy surrounding the Obi-Wan scripts. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later when we get into like the TV shows. But it mentioned that the way that events transpired was that Deborah Chow kind of brought her scripts to Filoni and Favreau and wanted to show them what they were planning to shoot. And Filoni and Favreau got worried because they were like, this is a little bit too close to what's going on with The Mandalorian, the Lone Wolf and Cub storyline, and that it was a little bit too small and a little bit too dark. And so when the word that that criticism got to Kathleen Kennedy, she's the one who put it on, quote unquote, indefinite hiatus until they could like retool the scripts, and she went and hired a new screenwriter and all that other stuff. And so that to me just proves that she's still in charge. Like she's still the shot caller at Lucasfilm. And also being the CEO of Lucasfilm, she controls the purse strings. So no matter what anyone does over there, like if she decides not to fund their project, they can't do anything. Like she could cancel The Mandalorian tomorrow if she wanted to and kick Favreau and Filoni out of the building. But she's not going to because like they're doing good work and they're working with her.
But she has done that a bunch. The very fact that so many people have been fired, like big name directors, A-list directors, keep getting fired from her projects, kind of demonstrates that she's absolutely in charge and she has the clout to kick out, Josh Trank and Colin Trevorrow and all these guys.
I mean, her projects are always a mess because she's not very good at kind of like, when she was a producer, she was kind of like a logistical producer. Steven Spielberg would tell her, okay, we need to have like a animatronic dinosaur on set tomorrow. And then like she'd make it happen. But she wasn't the one who was actually like producing the overall movie, right?
No creative. Yeah,
exactly. She didn't have any creative input. And if she did, it was kind of like whispering in the director's ear. And Spielberg was talented enough to know like what ideas were good and what ideas were bad. It was actually her husband, Frank Marshall, who was like more of like the producer, like as we know it. But Odin, under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, we have like this kind of Favreau-Filoni alliance that has brought us stuff like The Mandalorian, which many people credit as reinvigorating Star Wars after the disaster that was the sequel trilogy. And people keep saying that Favreau is getting kind of more and more entrenched in the leadership position over at Lucasfilm. Do you think there's anything to that?
Not in a way of replacing Kennedy. I think that he is definitely gaining power in leadership, but it's specifically under the tutelage or underneath Kathleen Kennedy, who is basically saying, I'm giving you this authority, I'm giving you this power, because she recognizes that he does have this creative ability. But as you mentioned with this Hollywood Reporter article, which I have pulled up, it says here, Filoni and Favreau pushed Chow and the show to go bigger, according to several sources. In any case, those concerns made their way to Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, who pressed the pause button. So even though Favreau and Filoni are seemingly gaining more power, at the end of the day, Kathleen Kennedy's the one's in charge, and if she doesn't like something, boom, as it says, push the pause button. As was mentioned previously, she can fire people. What I think, to me, is kind of the sign of her being in charge, but then also her being a bad leader, because both things could be true. She could be a terrible leader and a terrible producer, and then also still be in charge, is everything that was just mentioned, right? About how every project she's ever been a part of with Star Wars has had behind-the-scenes chaos. Every single one I don't think there's been a single film that has not had reshoots, that has not had some drama behind the scenes, that has not had, at least one point changing of directors. And I know that's something that's common a lot of times in Hollywood with, directors changing with the beginnings of projects. But when you especially look to a film like Solo, when the vast majority of it had been shot and then she decided to change directors, one, it shows you her stupidity and inability, but two, it shows you she has power. Someone who, again, back then people were having that story about, oh, she's not in power. You can't say that about someone who can stop a movie more than halfway through. Think about the money spent on that alone, and that's why that budget was so huge. You can't say that someone has no power if they are able to stop a production like that and then bring someone else on and get more money put into it. I mean, you have pure power at that point. So yeah, as far as the whole civil war going on at Lucasfilm, and they're taking, Filoni and Favreau are taking over. They might be gaining more power, but it's only because that is what Kathleen Kennedy is giving to them. And if at any point they go in a direction she doesn't like, she can snap them out of existence like Thanos.
And Mark, there's this other woman there named Michelle Rejwan, who is kind of like Kathleen Kennedy's, I guess, heir apparent. She's kind of being groomed to take over Lucasfilm eventually. And she comes from the Bad Robot School of Filmmaking, where she was from, the J.J. Abrams incubator type thing. And she's had her hands in everything since Rise of Skywalker. So she went from the movies to the TV shows. And I think she's got a big role in the production of Obi-Wan and Andor and stuff like that. What do you think the future of Star Wars looks like under a Rejwan kind of regime?
The same but worse, and I think it is going to be a Rejwan regime. I think everyone assumed that as soon as the news came that that's who was hired, that she was going to be the Kathleen Kennedy's protege. But there's no reason to think it would change. The reason I assumed that she was hired, that Michelle Rejwan was hired, was because she would continue everything that Kathleen Kennedy was doing. I mean, it's going to look like more of the same, and it's going to keep declining. It's going to creatively decline. I mean, they're not really making any films right now. I mean, they're always talking about films, but they get canceled more often than not. It'll decline until it's kind of a dead property. And I mean, it's just sad. At this point, I'm just resigned to it. I don't have any hope for Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars to somehow make a resurgence that's going to make me interested. And I can't believe that I'm saying that. If you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to be at this point, I thought you were crazy. But here we are.
Yeah. So, one of the things, Odin, that was kind of funny to me is that there were a lot of rumors about how J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy butted heads a lot, and how they hated each other, and there was civil strife between the two of them in the making of all the movies. And yet she hires a Bad Robot graduate to be basically her successor. And so I'm thinking that, first of all, J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy have a long history together. She knew him growing up. all this other stuff. And so like I never found those rumors to be very reliable, that there was like so much strife between the two of them. But Chris, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the Lucasfilm story group, because when Kathleen Kennedy came in, she kind of put together a story group of like young people that would basically sit there and help kind of oversee all the narratives for like the books, the TV shows, the movies they had planned and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was run by pretty much like all women, and they didn't seem to know much about Star Wars, but they helped write The Last Jedi. And then after Solo bombed, I think Kathleen Kennedy kind of like fired a bunch of people, and now it kind of exists and sort of does stuff, but at the same time, we don't really hear a lot about it. What do you think is the future of the story group in Lucasfilm, and how they're going to play a part in the franchise going forward?
Yeah. Did that Pablo Hidalgo guy, did he get fired? Is he gone?
It's unknown at this point.
I don't want to wish bad on anybody, truly, but he just seems like a real jerk. Like, he seems like a bad guy who doesn't deserve the position he was in. Like, I have a real problem. I guess I'm just sort of a populist contrarian at heart. I have a real problem with anybody who is like the front man for a brand who goes out of his way to treat the customers like crap. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that's just, it's terrible. And I guess, not to redirect your question with a question back at you, Kadish, but look, I'm just a simple unfrozen caveman lawyer, right? Can you explain this to me? The whole proposition here, right, is that Disney is supposed to be a for-profit company that's dedicated to making money. They spent $4 billion to acquire the Star Wars IP. And it is obvious everywhere you look, whether you look at the entertainment properties or the merchandise sales or the theme parks or whatever, there are diminishing returns. Now, you know my view of this. Again, to be the contrarian, I don't like gatekeeping. So however you want to like Star Wars is A-okay with me. I believe the more you make of it, the smaller it gets. Look, we're making more Star Wars, and what are we going to have? Two of the same character, Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi on tap again. Can we go back to the well? But there are clearly diminishing returns. Why is no one on the business side of Disney looking at this and saying, we spent $4 billion on this thing and it's worth less now than it was when Lucas took us for a ride and snookered us out of $4 billion? Like, why is that not happening? To me, it is very clear that if you were going to manage to thread the needle of making more Star Wars and making it good, which I think is very hard because I am not a believer in the vast unexplored universe theory of Star Wars storytelling, that Filoni and Favreau have figured out the secret sauce. They have figured out how to tap the spirit of Lucas, tie in the unique aesthetic and storytelling style, and still produce something that still feels somewhat fresh and have it be successful and unifying and bring in a mass audience. Why wouldn't you just throw everyone else out and say, you all have devalued this product, and these guys are the only two who have figured out how to do it right, and just let them do it? Because if you're a board member or you're an executive or you're anyone who wears a suit and a tie at the Walt Disney Company, you don't care about, Luke Skywalker or whether he's a hero or drinking green tit milk or anything. The only green you care about is on the bottom line. So why wouldn't you just elevate and reward the guys who produce results that increase the IP's value and just clean house of everybody else who screws it up?
Well, I can tell you from a Hollywood business perspective why that is.
Please.
And the thing is like,
I didn't mean to derail the whole conversation, but I'm listening to this whole thing and I'm like, why are we even talking about this? Why isn't the bottom line just dictating, let these guys take the ball and run with it?
Yeah, and for reference there, because I did a breakdown of this a while back. If you looked at total profits, like so taking out any budgets and stuff, original trilogy profit was around 2.3 billion in like net gain, like net profits. Prequel trilogy was 1.3 billion in net gain profit. Disney trilogy 1.4 billion. So we're looking at almost about a $1 billion difference between the original trilogy and the Disney trilogy. This is all also adjusted for inflation as well, and only marginally better than the prequel trilogy, which I think, as much as I love the prequel trilogy for the memes and because I think it's funny, I don't think a lot of us would say like they're really great, well done, crafted movies. You know, it's one of those things where like, nah, you would think that a revitalization of Star Wars would kind of get closer to the originals, but when you add in that $4 billion that they spent, or again, obviously the question is, was that money spent? Was some of it in stock options, right? There's questions there. But if you just take it at face value, the $4 billion spent for inflation, it was around $4.5 billion, meaning that there's still about $3 million in the hole. Or sorry, $3 billion in the hole.
Well, if you're not counting merchandising too,
yeah, not counting
which is a huge number,
just the movies.
But OT merchandising dwarfs prequel trilogy merchandising, which dwarfs the pathetic last few years of Disney Star Wars merch. In fact, most of their best-selling stuff, it's all old original trilogy stuff.
Yeah, but
that's what makes the money.
To get to Chris's point, so like if Star Wars were still just owned by an independent Lucasfilm, where it was a production company that sank or swam based off of that one IP, you would be correct, Chris. And like, you know, we need to clean house. We need to treat the IP with respect. In a conglomerate like Disney, it's a little bit less straightforward because they don't really care about the content. They care about the branding. And so like to them, so, you know, I have to dispute Odin a little bit here. Like Disney has recouped its initial $4 billion investment in Star Wars. And I think they did it like 2 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, that was just from the movies. Like that was just from the box office returns.
Yeah,
so I'm sure that they could have had a lot of other revenue streams that could have brought it back, but the movies specifically is what I was talking about.
From a board member perspective, from a studio head perspective, stuff like that, the movies, you know, in addition to the box office, the movies have a lot of ancillary value, where, you know, airplanes and home video and streaming and stuff like that. But in addition to that, you have this very hardcore fan base where at least half of them, no matter what you put out, as long as Star Wars on the label, they're going to consume it. They're going to love it because they just love the brand as opposed to the content itself. So they know that they can get away to a certain extent with very low quality stuff.
Do you think it's still 50%, or do you think that's dropped?
Honestly, dude, just judging by the idiots on Twitter I see every day, I have to say at least 50%.
Yeah, no, don't use Twitter, man. Twitter is totally fake.
Okay, but anyway, so the real value to Disney is the licensing of the Star Wars property. So no matter how many movies bomb, they're always going to have this license that's basically printing money through merchandise, video game licenses, like all types of stuff that they can monetize the brand with. And so, you know, this passive kind of licensing money is what really makes the property worth like the $4 billion that they paid for it. In addition to that, it's just kind of like one of those things where Disney shifted their entertainment focus from theatrical to streaming with Disney Plus, and Disney Plus brings in something like, I don't know, like $1 billion a month or something like that. It's probably less than that, but you get the idea. And so like by having Disney Plus be the exclusive place to get Star Wars, they guarantee like a certain monthly revenue just off of that alone. And they're not even putting out a ton of Star Wars stuff. They're putting up all the old stuff and, you know, 1 or 2 half-hour TV series. And so the draw of that has already paid for itself many times over. And from an executive perspective, it's just like, we don't care about the quality. We don't care if you run the franchise in the ground, as long as like the licensing and the streaming revenue isn't hurt. We're good with whatever it is you're doing, because a lot of the stuff that Kathleen Kennedy survives is due to her political alliances with people on the Disney board and people in the Disney upper echelon, like Alan Horn and Bob Iger were big Kathleen Kennedy supporters, and you know, she's been around Hollywood for like 2 or 3, 4 decades, and she's made a lot of connections and a lot of you know, alliances and stuff like that. And so I'm not too of the belief that you know, she's in any danger ever of being kicked out, especially because Lucas handpicked her. Before we move on, I just want to highlight this thing that Anthony, YouTube fan, said. He said, Salty Nerd Podcast, except supposedly Kennedy didn't lose her creative powers until after Solo in summer 2018, when she got the extension. Her say-so was overseen by Iger and others. Again, Iger being the head of Disney, like, of course, he gets the final say, and no matter who is, you know, in question about like making the final decision, because he's the guy who says you can have the money or you can't have the money, or I like this and I don't like this. But Kennedy, like from the perspective of Lucasfilm, like she never had her creative powers taken away from her. Like her decision to go, her decision of what shows to launch. That was her decision. Iger basically just said like, hey, we're going to pivot from movies to streaming. So switch all your stuff over there. And that's what she did. And she's been overseeing everything that's been coming out of Lucasfilm ever since. And so I don't buy that she doesn't have any creative power on that thing either. And real quick, $5 super chat from Brandon, the anime guy. Fuck Disney. That is all. Yes, Brandon, I think we can all agree. Fuck Disney.
Just to correct, it's Duck Fisney. It's the more PC way. It's the more polite way of saying it. Hashtag Duck Fisney.
Yeah, I was trying to be cute and say it the wrong way. But thank you for correcting me, Odin.
I'm a grammar Nazi. What can I say?
All right. So we talked about Lucasfilm. Let's talk about the Disney theme parks. There's been a lot of talk about this lately. Mark, do you have anything to say about Galaxy's Edge and was it Galaxy Star Cruiser or something like that?
Waste of money, Star Cruiser?
Yes, I do. So I got 4 kids.
Galactic Star Cruiser, that's what it is.
Yeah. So I have 4 kids, and last fall we all went to Universal Studios Orlando, and we did some Jurassic Park, but we did Harry Potter too. Fantastic. Everyone had a blast. My kids don't like Star Wars. They and that's anecdotal, but that's insane to me. I would have never. I mean, they've been exposed to so much Star Wars. I got some sweet action figures, tons of toys, tons of books. They don't care. They're like Harry Potter and Jurassic Park. So we went to Universal, and it was. Have y'all ever been to the Harry Potter theme parks? There are 2 sections.
Just when it first opened, I went. So I haven't seen the second edition, and there's apparently a lot of other stuff that they've added
it's sweet.
Since.
So the one side is Hogsmeade and Hogwarts Castle with all the rides, and then the other side is Diagon Alley. And it is just a fantastic recreation. You can tell that the people who did it loved the books, and they knew what Harry Potter fans would like. I look at the Star Wars theme parks, and look, I was really interested when I heard Disney. I mean, it was the movies too, but it was like, they're going to do theme parks now. That's going to be awesome. I'm going to get to visit an Ewok tree village, right? I'm going to get to, have some blue milk at Wooer's Cantina in Mos Eisley. I'm going to get to visit all these Star Wars locations that they're going to recreate. And they made the Black Spire Outpost with a bunch of characters that no one's ever seen, places I don't know. They have the Millennium Falcon, but it's like if Universal Orlando took the Harry Potter license and made a different street. Here's the German wizarding school. It's that bizarre. Why would you build a Star Wars theme park with as much money as it costs to build a Star Wars theme park with nothing recognizable, with all new content? Again, that's just a baffling, fundamental decision that I can't wrap my head around. And they keep doing it in every context. Disney keeps doing things where I'm like, the first thing you do is identify the first most popular 3 locations in the original trilogy and maybe throw in one from the prequels, and then maybe have a little hint of some of the stuff that we're doing now, so people can come visit whatever Echo Base. Who is interested in Black Spire Outpost? I'm not. I don't care. I don't care even a little bit. As far as the Galactic Star Cruiser, y'all saw some of the videos of kind of the performances. That was one of the more cringy things out of a lot of cringy things to come out of Disney Star Wars that I've ever seen. I cannot imagine paying anything at all to go watch that and act like it's an immersive Star Wars experience.
Think about what you spent on your entire family for the Warner Brothers, Universal.
Oh,
yeah. You could spend that probably several times over and still not reach the amount of money for that.
No, you could spend a week doing every single thing over and over and over again in Universal, not just Harry Potter, all the Jurassic Park stuff, everything. I don't know who it's for. I don't know who wants to immerse themselves in a Star Wars branded experience that has nothing to do with any Star Wars that you're familiar with.
John Campia.
That's it.
That guy.
And he probably got a lot of it comp too.
I heard there are actually rooms in Galactic Star Cruiser that are up to like $20,000 a night.
I believe it. But you know where people who are spending $20,000 a night are going? I mean, they're going to St. Bart. They're going to like the Riviera Maya and staying in the night. They're staying in Maui, in the nicest place you can stay in Maui. We had some friends who stayed at a place called Mayakoba, and Michael Jordan took his family to a 16,000 square foot villa on a beautiful Mexican beach for $20,000 a night. That's where you go. You don't go to the Galactic Star Cruiser for that money. Or you go for a straight full solid week in the nicest suite at the Hard Rock Hotel, staying on site at Universal, and you do whatever you want.
And if you look at the rooms for Galactic Star Cruiser, number one, they're not very good. But number two, they don't even have a TV in them. No. You're paying all this money for like a room with no TV. Real quick, before we move on with the discussion, Buford T. Justice, super chat for $9.99. Used to watch Star Wars at least once a year. Haven't watched any Star Wars movie since 2017. The Force is Luke Skywalker, not female. Chris, you're a family man. I want to get your opinion. Would you ever want to go to like, a Star Wars experience like Galaxy's Edge or Galactic Star Cruiser or anything like that if you could afford it?
Galactic Star Cruiser? No. I mean, I don't understand where the intersection of audience and audience with capacity to pay exists to sustain this thing. Because as you know, Matt, like I love Star Wars. I really enjoy it. I wouldn't $500 to go be trapped in a building full of weirdos for 2 days to pretend I was a Star Wars character. I sure as hell wouldn't pay $5,000 to do it. Like, again, how many people with the disposable income to drop that kind of coin on a vacation are going to want to do it going to this weird place, like LARPing the most uncompelling aspect of the Star Wars universe for 2 days? It seems very odd to me. When I heard the explanation of what they were going to do with this hotel, I thought, that seems really strange. And everything I have seen about it since just makes it seem odder and odder, curiouser and curiouser to me, Matt. As for the theme park attraction, I think Mark said everything just about right. Again, going back to if I am suit and tie executive at Disney and, I don't know a Wookiee from a hole in my ass, like I would find the person who told me to put the wrong stormtroopers in my amusement park and now people don't want to go there. And I would can that person because I'd be like, I don't know what any of this stuff is, but I do know there are a ton of people on the internet who are mad about what you did. I know that we can't fill the rooms in this weird, like, Star Trek convention hotel you've created. And I know the few Star Wars things I know, which are like Yoda and Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, are nowhere to be seen in this thing we just dropped millions and millions of dollars on. So yeah, the whole thing is just totally perplexing to me. And frankly, again, why I am just happy to have some Blu-ray copies of just specialized editions so I can go back to an era when we had a nice unifying piece of cultural mythology that started out as an homage to the Flash Gordon serials of the 1950s and 60s. And now we've created so damn much of it that it's become as totally disposable. Like, I kind of feel like that scene in The Simpsons where Homer's in hell and the devil says, "Oh, you like donuts, do you? I have all the donuts you can eat." And they plug his nose and just keep feeding him with donuts. That's how I feel about Star Wars, right? Yeah. I'm Homer Simpson. The donuts are Star Wars, and we're just going to have more and more of it till we die. And it's going to become less and less compelling every time there's a new piece of it created.
But so it's not new stuff, though. It's Tatooine. You want to see some more Tatooine?
Yes.
No, let's go back to Tatooine. How about we go back to Tatooine?
It's just a desert planet that's
Jakku.
not Tatooine.
Well, that was Jakku. But
25%
Obi-Wan is
different.
Tatooine.
That's right.
Obi-Wan's
Did you ever
Tatooine,
wonder
Boba
how
Fett's
Han
Tatooine.
Solo got his last name? But no, actually, I didn't.
Nobody did. That's got to be in the top 5 of what?
I gotta know how he got his
Solo
dice.
got-
I gotta know how he got his dice.
Yeah, the
Odin,
dice.
I literally never knew that I'd never,
Yeah,
as many times as I saw Star Wars, his dice. What's he talking about? His
I was the
dice?
same way,
Is that
yeah.
a thing? What? But
And then you look back, you're like, oh, he did have dice. What do you know?
okay, that's not important at all. And I always assumed that Han Solo got his name because his parents were Mr. and Mrs. Solo. Like, that is so not interesting to me.
or
It is
he
incredibly
grew up
uninteresting.
as an orphan on his own, and
Yeah.
he just called himself Han Solo.
Not some random dude saying, okay, Han Solo.
But you know what's funny about the
That's painful. It just hurts me.
you know what's funny about the attractions, the theme parks, and stuff like that. Like, Mark, you're absolutely right. Like, if I wanted to go on a Star Wars experience, I'd want to like walk through the streets of Tatooine, Mos Eisley. I'd want to go through Cloud City. I'd want to be on the Death Star, or the Corellian Corvette that Leia was on. Like, there's so many iconic locations that you as a fan would want to experience. And when Disney first acquired Star Wars, Chris, I was thinking about my time on going on Star Tours.
I was just going to bring it up.
That one ride.
I was thinking
Star
the whole
Tours
time, I was like, I'd go to Star Tours because that was fun.
Star Tours was great. So I was like, why don't we got more of that stuff? But again, like it's kind of like, I've heard rumors that there were some rights issues where Disney didn't want to use any of the stuff that wasn't originated under them just for like licensing purposes or something like that. But I don't know how accurate
Was that because Lucas
is.
would have to get a cut or something?
That's what I've heard, but I don't know. Like if you spend $4 billion on a franchise, I don't know if you wouldn't accept anything less than full ownership of those rights. But
It's Disney.
yeah,
So
I don't know.
I don't know. He's a wily bastard, though.
Well, even if he gets a cut, even if he gets 50%, that's still what you do. And the thing is, they didn't even build things based on their IP. They built random garbage.
Yeah.
But you can read the novel tie-in if you want to learn
explain
more about
everything.
Black Spire Outpost. Who cares?
Odin, a lot of people are saying that the reason that these properties are struggling is because of the COVID restrictions, that people just aren't going to theme parks, and it's not that like these things suck and they were done wrong. It's because of the worldwide pandemic. What do you think about that? Is there any truth to that?
I mean, not really, because a lot of the stuff that was around prior to the pandemic starting and it wasn't doing all that well. And then you look to the areas that once things started to reopen and which ones were doing best. I mean, I think Harry Potter Land was easily doing incredibly well, faster than a lot of the others, these other places. And it kind of, reminds me back as you were talking and we were all talking about, making something for fans. And my wife is a diehard Harry Potter fan, book fan, not movie fan. But when she went to even the first time, like before they started adding a lot of the stuff, when she went the first time, she felt like she was going into that world. When she had the one, like it was actually amazing because Ollivander's there. They pick random people to be like the Harry Potter from the story. Like again, immersing you in a part of the story that you can connect with because that's what you're supposed to do. And at one point, she like was chosen. And so even though she knew it was all fake, she got caught up in the moment of like, oh no, like this feels real. It feels like this wand is actually doing the things that I think it's doing. Imagine if they were able to take that concept of, hey, let's build this for fans and do this. And imagine if they had actually done that with these Star Wars attractions and actually made it where you become a part of it. Like I was thinking to not just Star Tours, but imagine like a Terminator. I don't know why. It's not even a ride, but the Terminator 2 attraction. Where you go in with the 3D glasses on, and the actors are there, and they're playing it out, but then they go into Judgment Day, and then it's like all the smoke and everything. Have y'all experienced that before? I forget if it's Disney or if it's Universal. They have it. Oh, I love it. It's just because like you get put into the story of Judgment Day essentially, and it's all Terminator release.
Yeah.
You can do something
James
like that.
Cameron was behind that. That was
Oh
his
yeah,
brainchild.
it's one of the few things that James Cameron recently that I
Well,
can.
you know what's funny, Odin, is so like out here in Las Vegas, we used to have at the Hilton, we used to have like the Star Trek experience,
Mhm.
and basically you could go there and eat and drink at Quark's Bar from DS9,
Mm.
and then you could walk through like the bridge of the Next Generation Enterprise, and they had like this interactive experience, and it was fantastic. And Star Trek
Yeah.
fans flipped out going through it every year. It was
Imagine
great.
doing that with Star
Yeah.
Wars. I
Yeah.
mean, again, you could have it be where it's just something as simple as Star Tours. You could have it be as simple as walking through the sets and
Well,
walking through like
I'm actually
handcrafted
surprised.
sets. You know,
I'm actually surprised Disney hasn't opened up a Canto Bight themed casino out here in Vegas somewhere. You know, like
Even
you'd think
that
that
would
would be a
make more
no-brainer.
sense than
I know,
a
right?
new planet and a new place. But it's not just imagine them doing that. Imagine them not doing that.
Yeah.
Imagine the kind of incompetence and disconnect between what fans actually want. That these professionals with hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on this don't come to the most obvious conclusion of all time in theme parks, which is which 3 or 4 places from Star Wars are we going to build so people can visit? I don't get it. I never will.
So let me ask you guys, is there a way back for these theme parks? Like, is there a way that Disney can course correct and get people to start visiting them more and utilizing them more? Odin, do you think that there's a way back?
There is, but it would require them to tear things down, and I just don't see them doing that. I mean, the amount of money they've probably invested into all of these things, knowing what I know just about how theme parks work in general, these things are going to be around for quite a while, and they do tend to refresh things that don't work or are maybe getting outdated. But this stuff is brand new, and even though it's not really driving in people, and so I guess you could argue it's outdated from a pure excitement level perspective, it is still something that is something brand new that they've put their money into, and I don't know if they've gotten their money back. And so I would say they'd have to get to a point where they make their money back, which could take them a lot longer, like at least on that initial investment, because of how far off they missed the mark. But imagine if they just have a complete redesign. If you have a complete redesign and you start to actually focus on what fans actually want, maybe you actually put out surveys. Like, imagine if they just went to theme park goers and said, what would you like to see? What are some things that you think would be things that you would actually want to come back and return to? Take those ideas, listen to them. You could then have a lot of really great ideas, interactive experiences, taking in those things from Star Trek, from Harry Potter world, all these things, and actually create an experience where people might actually be willing to spend money to the excess of the Star Cruiser, but specifically doing things that are actually in and based in the Star Wars universe that are actually recognizable to some extent, and not something brand new. Like, people don't want to spend a lot of money on something that they just have no idea what it is. They would rather spend that kind of money if it's like, oh, I actually get to live out the fight on the fight on the Death Star. Like, if I get to actually have these types of experiences. But yeah, it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a lot of money and time at this point.
So moving on, let's talk about the High Republic. This was Kathleen Kennedy's big brainchild, where basically after they nixed all the established expanded universe stuff, they were going to bring this in the era of the Jedi, where basically before the Old Republic, this was the High Republic. And it's kind of interesting because when they launched it, it was very haphazard and slapdash, and it just felt like it was all over the place. And now they've kind of categorized it into like phase 1 and phase 2, kind of following Marvel's lead and how they categorize their movies. And so phase 1 was kind of a mess, all the New Republic books and comic books just weren't very well received. And for phase 2, they're kind of trying to get a little bit more organized, at least it seems. And this is where all the major books and comic books are coming out of, is the High Republic era. Chris, have you ever checked out any of the High Republic stuff? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, man. I mean, look, in general, I am not super into the ancillary materials. Again, engage with it however you want. Not saying the way you want to enjoy Star Wars is wrong. I really don't like gatekeeping. I say that over and over again, but it's not interesting to me at all. The rollout is interesting, though. To me, it feels like Shadows of the Empire on steroids. Do you remember that? The movie rollout without a movie? Shadows of the Empire was a promotion that Lucas ran between the release of the special editions and the Phantom Menace. that was supposed to be a story that connected Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. They did a Nintendo 64 game and a book and some action figures, a comic book, and some a soundtrack even. But there was no movie. And it got, a lot of people played the video game, I think, and some people read the book. It got some traction, not a whole lot. I think this is, even though the rollout is bigger, the audience, I am sure, is much, much smaller. To me, this High Republic stuff is a niche of a niche that I feel like, from the perspective of, somebody who talks to a lot of people who are, I think, could very easily be described as casual Star Wars fans. They have no idea what the hell you're talking about. If you bring up the High Republic, I mean, that's a very, very, very narrow demographic, I suspect.
Yeah, rock pilots and
Geode. Yeah, he's a navigator. Odin, get it right.
I'm sorry,
Mark. You seem to have some High Republic books there. You want to?
No, I don't.
Those? No.
I own 0 High Republic books. I'm going to use this time to tell you about real Star Wars books. This is called Heir to the Empire, written by Timothy Zahn. It's signed, which is dope as heck. Yeah, Rogue Squadron. Those books are amazing.
Just got all 9
hardcover
for like nothing.
Have you read them?
I have not. I got them because everyone told me they were amazing, and so
guys, I need to make an announcement. Real quick. I just booked Kevin J. Anderson to come on an episode of Bad Writing.
Seriously?
In May. And so he's going to come on. He's going to talk about Star Wars. He's going to talk about Dune. He's going to talk about his new books, and I can't wait to have him come on here and chat about that.
Oh yeah,
I was a big fan of his Star Wars books.
His Star Wars books are great. I don't have them in hardcover, but there's we have a Dutch mutual friend who has a 3-volume edition of the Jedi Academy series, which follows. So this is Timothy Zahn's series. This kind of started off the Star Wars expanded universe books, followed by Dark Force Rising and The Last Man. Amazing.
Yeah, Timothy Zahn was great.
Timothy Zahn was great. I also have these.
By the way, audiobooks for those are on point. Mark Thompson does phenomenal voice work. If you haven't read these feel like Star Wars, and I don't think that's nostalgia talking. It feels like a continuation of the characters that you grew to love watching the original trilogy, as opposed to Disney, where everyone's a sad sack failure who reverted back to their original. I remember before the Force Awakens came out, a lot of people were speculating that they were just going to adapt, that Heir to the Empire trilogy, which I think would have probably been a better idea. Would have been a smart move.
Literally anything would be a better idea than just rebooting A New Hope with Kathleen Kennedy's stand-in. This is called The Courtship of Princess Leia by Dave Wolverton. If you want to know where things like the Witches of Dathomir and riding Rancors, that's all here. I like it. It's a lot. My favorite one is called I, Jedi by Mike Stackpole. Kind of a standalone with a guy named Corran Horn, who it is a tragedy that a lot of people haven't heard of Corran Horn. He's one of the best Star Wars characters that there is.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, is it Corran mentioned in the X-Wing series?
I think he is. I don't remember if he's actually, no, Corran Horn is a main character in the X-Wing series.
Yeah.
I, Jedi, are those Stackpoles or Alfreds?
Yeah, this is Stackpole.
Yeah, then Corran Horn's a big character in there. I, Jedi, if you haven't read I, Jedi, it's dope as heck. Ignore the High Republic. Forget everything about that. It's cringy and juvenile and stupid. Look for the expanded universe stuff. Look for Michael Stackpole.
Legends is what it's now called.
Whatever. Look for the Legends. Look for Timothy Zahn. Look for Kevin
very
J. Anderson.
Hercule Jerkily stuff going on there.
We're not going to talk about Hercule Jerkily. We're not going to. Don't bring that here.
I won't bring that evil upon you, Ricky Bobby. Odin, so a big thing about the High Republic is that it's really the baby of the aforementioned Lucasfilm story group. Like that's their thing. They came up with it. They kind of set the agenda for it, And I think that that's like the big thing on their plate currently is like basically breaking out ideas for the High Republic, and then they handed them off to Bantam Books or like whoever has the book license, and Bantam Books basically tells the authors, okay, here's what you have to work with, go to it. So what do you think, or what kind of a job do you think the story group has been doing with the High Republic? Because we've gotten a lot of comic books, we've gotten a lot of books, and none of them seem to have caught on.
I can't imagine that they've done a good job, seeing how, amazing of a job that they've done with the new movies and everything. I mean, the fact that one of the first things that happened was they were like, oh yeah, all the EU and all of the amazing stories there. Yeah, we're just gonna, immediately just declare that officially non-canon. None of that matters anymore. And now, over the course of these new ideas and concepts, now certain ideas and concepts, we're going to, canonize them a little bit. And, we're going to borrow ideas from them to put them into the canon. And then you recognize, wait a minute, but there's things that you're introducing now that you even said, oh yeah, as far as Rebels and as far as, I'm blanking out on the other, Clone Wars, right? All that stuff is canon. And then they're doing things that contradict the things that they have declared to be. So if they can't even keep canon, consistent, I can't imagine that they're going to be able to tell a half good story in this new High Republic, or two, keep it within continuity of anything, for that matter. But yeah, I kind of second what Mark was saying. Go back to the old stuff, because there's tons of great things. Thrawn Trilogy is great. There's a Thrawn duology as well. There's an amazing book which I only was able to listen to the audiobook of, and unfortunately it was the abridged, but it dealt with the origin story of Jeru Sabaoth. Great. It was about the ship. I forget it, but it's phenomenal. And just, you have all those things, and then you have, the Old Republic novels as well, which are all phenomenal too. You have the Darth Bane, was it trilogy or duology? But you have the Darth Bane stories, which are all great.
And so comics too, all the Tales of the Jedi stuff.
Absolutely.
Great prequel era comics. Just fantastic. Quinlan Voss, and Ayla Secura, who George Lucas actually took and put in the movies. They were so successful. He liked them so much. Is it
so exciting that I picked up even more? Like, I picked up all all of the X-Wing stories. Like, I'm just so excited to dive into them. I picked up these. It's the Han Solo trilogy. I heard that those were fun. I think Quarterback Garrett mentioned that those were fun. I picked up the novelization of all three of the originals.
I
used $2.75 for, and it's all three together. The first one, I didn't even realize that the first novelization was actually written by George Lucas. So that's really cool to see. Outbound Flight. Thank you, TJ Carr. That was what I was looking for. Outbound Flight is phenomenal. It's so great. And then I picked up, some more Stackpole. He did Dark Tide 1, Dark Tide 2, New Jedi Order.
Later. That's a conversation, but I have a beef with New Jedi Order.
Okay.
That's where it gets kind of plus minus for me.
Yeah. $1.75, 75 cents. I figured, give it
a shot.
Hey, Matt, can I make what I think is a key point about specifically the Zahn trilogy, but really in a broader sense, what used to be called the EU, the Expanded Universe, and is now Legends? You talked before when I tried to have you explain to me why Disney isn't more concerned with promoting the people who are adding value to the IP and demoting or firing the people who are taking value away, by explaining that some of the shortcomings can just sort of vanish into the blob of the multi-billion dollar Disney empire, right? Yeah. Like the broad base of Disney holdings and financial resources can make some of the cost associated with the errors Lucasfilm has made with the IP just sort of disappear. When the Zahn trilogy came out, that guy was working without a net, because Star Wars was starting to fade from the zeitgeist. And if that didn't hit, if that wasn't successful, first of all, that guy wasn't going to get paid. And second of all, who knows, like, whether Lucas would have been inspired to, keep going with the special editions and the prequels, no matter how you feel about them, or what the reception would have been like. And if you look at the way Timothy Zahn, who was clearly a fan, wrote the original trilogy characters, he was very true to the characterizations that we knew from the films. I think most Star Wars fans who read those books saw, a Han Solo and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker whom they recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And when your financial future, whether or not this was going to continue as a profitable enterprise, was dependent on giving people what they wanted, look at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, Matt, like maybe we got Luke Skywalker as this like weird hobo slurping green tit milk because Disney could afford to give us that and Timothy Zahn could not. So I think that's a really important point, that when the rubber met the road, it was really important to write these characters consistent with the hopes and expectations of the fans who love them and care about them.
Just to put it in a little bit of perspective, Chris. So, like when the Heir to the Empire trilogy came out, there were no prequels.
Right.
Lucasfilm had a very heavy hand in overseeing the writing of it to make sure everything was consistent. That was back when George Lucas was still in charge, and he had people who their sole purpose for being at the company was to make sure that continuity carried over into the books and stuff like that. And plus, Timothy Zahn was a very talented writer. You fast forward to today, we got people like Chuck Wendig, doing this stuff. What Disney does is they license out the property, the High Republic, to a book company. The book company then goes and writes the books, and Disney's already made its money off the license. So again, it's just like one of those things where Disney doesn't care about the quality of the finished product. They just care about the licensing of the finished product. And that's kind of like the evil corporatization argument right there, is that if there was actually some quality control like there used to be back in the day, we'd probably be getting better stuff instead of non-binary Jedi Sith twins, which are actual characters in the High Republic comic books. But getting away from the High Republic, let's talk about Star Wars movies, because this is really like the core of what Star Wars is, right? It's the movie trilogies and stuff like that. And ever since, the Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars has been conspicuously absent from, the movie sphere. And we just got an announcement the other day. I don't know how official it is, but there's a rumor that Damon Lindelof, the creator of Lost and the creator, showrunner, writer of the woke Watchmen on HBO and stuff like that, has been hired to write a new Star Wars film. And this goes back to the Michelle Rejwan Bad Robot kind of connection, because Damon Lindelof and J.J. Abrams are friends. They worked on the Star Trek movies together. And so it sounds like they're bringing him in to develop a new Star Wars series, or a new trilogy, I should say. Add to that, we've got news that Taika Waititi is developing his Star Wars movie. The Rian Johnson trilogy is still out there in the ether, although it's not quite clear like whether or not that's still a go.
I think there's been more to indicate that that's done. There was some story, I forgot where it came from, but basically it was like a mainstream source indicating that was no longer on the plans.
It's quite possible, but so long as Kathleen Kennedy is in charge, that the potential for it to crop up again is always there, because she loved working with Rian Johnson. The big surprise to me is that Star Wars as a movie property is so valuable. And I can understand like if they wanted to take a break during like the COVID lockdowns because nobody was going to the theaters. But to me, like there should be stuff in the pipeline for big theatrical releases, but they've just been focusing on the TV shows. So Mark, I want to throw this to you. What do you think the future looks like for Star Wars films? Are we going to see stuff in the theaters anytime soon? Who's going to be behind them? Will they, be carrying on previous storylines? Will they be going in a new direction? What do you think?
I take with a huge grain of salt anytime a new director gets announced, because it just keeps happening over and over and over. I mean, you got Benioff and Weiss, they were announced, they're out. Rian Johnson, I don't think has any more interest, because I don't care how thick your skin is. He did not have fun after The Last Jedi. There's no way he could have. And he's aware of it, but he's got Knives Out going, and I deal with the drugs that were central to the first Knives Out plot for a living, so I can't talk about that because he didn't bother asking me, and it's just a hot mess. None of it works.
But he owns all of that franchise, so he's making
the fact is he
it.
owns that franchise. I don't see him jumping back into Star Wars, even if he had the opportunity, when He could just keep making, quirky mystery movies with Daniel Craig. Why would he do it? He can just call up another 8 actors for the third one and the fourth one and whatever. I can't see people getting excited for a Star Wars film from the writer of Star Trek Into Darkness. I mean, Lindelof
he's a hack.
He's a hack. I wasn't going to be that way, Matthew, but then you went there, and yeah, he's a hack.
I've been very outspoken since the end of Lost at how much I think Dan Lindelof is a hack.
He's a hack. Do you know how happy I was? My brother said, "You got to watch Lost. You got to watch Lost. You got to watch Lost." And I never watched Lost. And then he watched the finale of Lost and was like, "Dude, you didn't waste your time."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So he's a hack. He's announced. What are the? I don't know. I mean, Patty Jenkins was announced. She's not going to get her movie probably because Wonder Woman 1984 was a hot mess.
Didn't she? Did they confirm that she was it for Star Wars what was it? The one that canceled on her.
So
it was Star Wars. She was going to do.
It was a Rogue Squadron.
Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
Because she loves jets. Except she did the worst jet sequence in the history of film.
Well, I think
Wonder Woman 1984.
I think after the failure of Wonder Woman 1984, Kathleen Kennedy was like, I don't know if I want to take another risk.
Specifically that jet sequence. I turned it off.
Oh, it was insultingly bad.
It was so bad, and I just had to laugh. I'm like, all right,
it was bad, but it could be worse.
So you got to nope. No. You can't.
You're welcome.
No. Okay, research. I don't know what the future is, but I don't think Kathleen Kennedy knows what kind of outfit that's any way competent or any way has a plan. And you would think with a $4 billion franchise, there would be some plan in place. You would think wrong, as you saw from the sequel trilogy. But how many directors are they going to announce that? Oh, whoopsie! I think Taika Waititi has the best shot of anybody. We're not going to get into Thor 3, which I know people tend to like, but I got this real beef with the little zappy thing that goes on the neck, right? When you spend the second act establishing your little zappy device that incapacitates Thor, incapacitates Loki, it incapacitates Asgardians, they have access to it, and then you go fight Hela, and you don't even use the zappy thing. You don't even try to use the zappy thing. As a whole subject, I got a problem with the zappy thing.
Come on, man.
Yeah, Carl Urban's great, but is he going to get his movie? I don't know. He's making Thor movies. Is he going to want to jump and deal with Star Wars? I mean, directors have got to talk. They've got to see the reaction to everybody. They got to see the bitterness and the cynicism, at least with kind of the Twitter fan base. I don't know if I'd want to deal with it when I can be like, well, I could make Thor 5. I like all those guys. So
Odin,
I don't know what it is.
Odin,
I don't think they know what it is.
Odin, let me ask you, what do you think is the future of Star Wars movies? Do you think that there's any way where we can see them successfully return to the theater, and who should be working on them?
I not anytime soon, and I don't think Disney thinks that there is either, which is why there's been such a huge push for their series. Whether it's Mandalorian, whether it's Book of Boba Fett / Mandalorian, whether it is the upcoming Kenobi series. They've got a lot of plans for that, but there has been really no talk about anything concrete as far as upcoming films, and I just don't see them coming up at any time soon. I think that, especially with COVID, they saw the writing on the wall as there being a huge push for and a greater need for them to focus more on their streaming content. I honestly think that they've kind of messed that up as well. I mean, they had a great thing going with Baby Yoda, but now it's like I think they kind of overplayed their hand with it. I don't think it's gonna play out with them in the end. But if they really wanted to get back into the films and they really wanted to be able to, I think, have any success. And I know that it would be pandering, and I know that a lot of us would call it out as pandering. But to me, one of the only ways that I think they could get a lot of people back on would be to do one of these stories from the EU, to be perfectly honest. Like, could you imagine if they announced we're going to do a Thrawn trilogy? We're going to do the Thrawn trilogy, and you bring in a director, obviously I'm partial to this director myself, but, we're going to bring Denis Villeneuve to come in and you're gonna expect a visual masterpiece like he tends to do, or just any other, you know, kind of big time as far as like big vision director that there might be. I think that could bring enough you know, fans / normies into it to say, oh, this looks intriguing, but yeah, it's not going to be for a while. And that's even a stretch to say that they would even do that, because they're so high up on their own High Republic, their own sequel trilogy nonsense, that I honestly don't think that they would be willing to actually admit, because basically by doing that, they would admit that they screwed up. They went in the wrong direction. They tried to push too hard, and now they need to placate fans. But the question is, will fans actually fall for it? And I think a lot of fans wouldn't. I think a lot of fans would say, "Nope, you burned me too many times. I don't want to see you ruin one of the last things that I'm holding on to keep me happy."
So, Chris, as a Star Wars fan, what would you like to see? What would get you to go see another Star Wars movie in the theater? Like, do you want to see another retread of, like, you know, the Clone Wars and the original trilogy with like characters that we already know and love? Do you want to see something new? Who would you want to see making it? Who would you want to see involved? Just as a Star Wars fan, like, what would excite you?
I have been sitting here pondering the answer to every question while Mark and Odin were talking, and trying to think about what would get me excited to go back to the theater. And I am definitely not one of those folks, Matt, who you talked about, who just consumes anything with Star Wars on it. Like, I am not in the group that hated The Force Awakens. The way I think about The Force Awakens is I viewed it as a very effective, fun amusement park ride that allowed me to approximate what it must have felt like to go into the theater to see The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. Because I never got to see any of the original trilogy films in the theater, and just to have the live experience of going into a movie theater with all of my friends with anticipation and seeing the characters I knew do something I didn't know anything about going in. I stayed totally spoiler free. By the time I saw the original trilogy when I was a kid, I had read storybooks and comic books. I knew every twist. I knew every visual. That was a cool experience for me, and I was very open to what was going to come next. I saw The Last Jedi, and I sat through all like 9.5 hours of it, and I was totally mortified. I was like, this is terrible. And what's more, this film was specifically made to tell me, you, Buchignani, 40-year-old legacy Star Wars fan, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We don't want to keep making crap for you, so GTFO. And you don't have to tell me twice, right? Like, I won't let the door hit me in the ass on the way out. So I didn't go see Solo. I've never seen it. I didn't go see The Rise of Skywalker, which everybody tells me is a complete disaster. Whatever. I don't need to see this stuff. I've enjoyed The Mandalorian. I pick and choose. And so what would get me excited to go back? Man, I really don't know. I think, again, I feel like the IP is exhausted. Other than my Ocean's 11 with the bounty hunters from the Executor, I really don't know, man. Maybe you come up with a really good story and set it in an entirely different era and setting. You give me, I do like some of the stuff they have come up with in the Knights of the Old Republic universe and that expanded online RPG. If you could set something in the Old Republic universe, maybe that would be interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. So I would echo that. My answer to that question is Disney sells Star Wars to Warner Brothers, and then Warner Brothers and Legendary get a guy like Denis Villeneuve and do a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy with Revan.
Yeah, I could see that working.
That would get me excited about it. But nobody involved right now could be involved. There's nothing Disney could do cinematically that I care about. I'm exactly like you. I walked out of the theater in The Last Jedi, and that's the last time I've seen a Star Wars film in theaters. I can't do
and it was intentionally made to tell you and me, Mark.
Oh yeah.
To go F off.
And we did.
Right, exactly. I was like, okay. I mean, I did think that sucks. Like, I'm sorry you don't want my money. I mean, hell, I'm expecting and hoping to live many more decades. I could have been like spending money with you guys, but if you don't want it, again, you don't
I
gotta
got
tell me
kids.
twice.
I was going to take them to that, but fine. That's all right. Okay. Well,
So I think that the smartest thing Lucasfilm could do in terms of the movie stuff is, number one, stop hiring Bad Robot alumni. They've, anyone associated with J.J. Abrams should have nothing to do with Star Wars, in my opinion. But number two, they need to hire a very talented producer to oversee everything and actually come up with a plan out the movies and the storylines, and take the time to actually like figure out what the story is going to be. You need to have a Kevin Feige like figure overseeing.
What a novel idea!
Yeah, and you need to actually like have a plan. You can't just do the J.J. Abrams thing where we're going to make it up as we go along. You need to plot this stuff out long term, like decades, over the course of decades. Like, these are the movies we're going to do. Next, they need to stop recycling Clone Wars and the original trilogy and going backwards in time. They need to move the franchise forward, because, with the High Republic, it's like, oh, we're going to go 500, 1,000 years before the Clone Wars and stuff like that. It's so creatively bankrupt to just keep going back and using the lore that's already been established, instead of doing something new and moving the franchise forward and keeping it vibrant and interesting. Like, I don't know if you guys remember in the EU with the Yuzon Vong, the aliens that came out and were invisible to the Force. The Jedi like didn't know how to deal with them and stuff like that. That's the type of thing that we need to see happen in the movies. Is we need we can't keep going back to the Empire. We can't keep.
It's the First Order, Matthew. It's not the Empire.
Yeah,
it's the First Order.
Yes. But the franchise needs to keep moving forward, in my opinion. So those are the things I think really need to be done to save the movie end of things. We need a strong producer. We need to get away from the Bad Robot people, and we need to move forward in the franchise. But kind of going hand in hand with the movies is the Star Wars TV shows. And the big thing that everyone's focused on right now is the Obi-Wan series. And we had this really interesting Variety article that kind of detailed how originally it was going to be Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, and the scripts were basically written, and then Filoni and Favreau stepped in, and they had to put the pause button on and rewrite everything. And we got the teaser for the new Obi-Wan's series. But in addition to Obi-Wan, we've got Andor coming out, which might actually be good because of the guy that's working on it, overseeing it. We've got the Mandalorian. We've got Mandalorian season 3, aka the Book of Boba Fett, and we've got a couple other things that are kind of in the pipeline that haven't really materialized yet, but those are like the big ones. And Disney's really going all in on Disney Plus with like the Star Wars stuff. So it seems to be working. Disney has like a pretty substantial user base right now. Odin, do you think that the Star Wars TV shows are going to be enough to keep Disney Plus afloat and make it successful?
I'm not sure, because I know that I've read some articles that even though their base might be high or like might be substantial, I want to say there were a lot of reports that they've been missing their marks, that they had expected to be at a certain level, that they were expecting a certain level of success, but then they didn't actually reach it. And then you add to that the fact that you're going to be losing people at some point, because why is it that people sign up for Disney Plus? For me, I feel that a lot of the people that I know sign on to it because they want access to, legacy Disney, like classic Disney animation. Something that I'm drawn to because I grew up with them was the Disney animated films back from like the 90s, films like Brink and stuff, which you could probably get online for free anyway. But like, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like a lot of people have it for. It's just because it's there, or because they got it for free because of Verizon or whatever, phone plan they had. So you have to take that into account. And then the question is, do people stay on or sign up specifically for the Star Wars content, and will it be enough? And I think that as the seasons and series have gone on, I think that there's been more for people to say, okay, I'm done. I've had enough, than for people to say, I want to know more. I think that Book of Boba Fett was a great example of that, where they had some potential, but then when you're watching it, like, this really isn't all that intriguing. This really isn't all that, engaging. And then you look to the Obi-Wan series, and yeah, you might have some people that sign on because they're interested in the Obi-Wan series. And I think Deborah Chow was the best director from the first season of Mandalorian. I thought that she had the best episodes. Every episode that she directed were my favorites. Like, I thought that she did a great job with it. I don't know if that was enough for her to be put as the showrunner for this entire series, but we'll have to, of course, wait and see. But this is just going to be kind of again another retread. It reminds me a little bit of Rogue One, where it's like, oh, what's the big thing they're talking about? Oh, there's going to be a huge battle, at least 2 battles between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and it's like, yeah, as a fan, I don't want to see that because that kind of destroys the entire emotional impact of the original trilogy, where they had that moment, they had that meeting, like that was all building up to it. But if you take this into the equation, I think it's going to push a lot more people away. So I think that some people might get tricked into it, some people might be pulled in, but I think it might be moving in the wrong direction for them as far as hardcore fans.
Mark, what do you think? Is the future of Star Wars on streaming?
I think that they think the future of Star Wars is on streaming. The way I've looked at the shows are Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are getting to do their live action fan fiction, playing with all the existing toys. There's nothing really new to it. Even The Mandalorian, it was, what if Boba Fett was, what if there was a bunch of Boba Fetts? What if Yoda was a baby? And let's bring in Luke Skywalker. I mean, it's like guys playing with multi-million-dollar action figures just in their room with their toys. There's nothing particularly groundbreaking. I think that's why it's probably been the best received, is because people can kind of grasp these guys they're just doing Star Wars stuff in a competent way. I got more of a beef with Dave Filoni than maybe some people do.
What's your beef?
Oh my goodness. The 2 biggest beefs is bringing back Darth Maul, which was supposed to be an Elseworlds thing in a comic one-shot. And he brought back, Darth Maul got bisected and tossed down. And so that set the precedent for J.J. Abrams bringing back Palpatine, which I thought was terrible. And now it's more of a comic booky, is he dead? Well, I don't know. I mean, Palpatine got tossed down a shaft, vaporized, and then the whole thing exploded into atoms. But no, he's back with the dark side. Darth Maul can't get any deader. I don't like that comic book. Midichlorians.
Clones and midichlorians.
And then the other thing that he did was throw time travel into Star Wars, which I can't get behind. I don't care how you do it. Throwing time, Star Wars does not. It doesn't accommodate time travel. So I don't love all of Filoni's ideas. He does some stuff, but the stuff that he's good at is just taking all George Lucas's stuff and kind of running with it, again, in kind of a big budget fan fiction way. Kenobi, I'm dreading it to see what they do to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is my favorite character of all the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. At one point, I would have been thrilled to hear that there was going to be a trilogy, but the fact is, it's kind of like Cassian Andor. What do we need to know about Obi-Wan's time exiled on Tatooine? Where is the compelling story? Where is the compelling story for how did Han Solo get his name? Well, we had a young Han Solo movie. It was called A New Hope. It was called the original trilogy. We don't need... Yeah, well, that's true about the dice. Thanks, Odin. That's true about the dice.
We had to know.
Andor,
we just had to know.
We didn't really need Rogue One. It was nice. It was fine. It was the best thing that Disney's done so far. But we know what happens to Cassian Andor. I didn't really care about him in the first place.
And he was a boring character, so why do we need a whole show about
character, him? But like we got to do a show about him.
So guys, we have a special guest joining us, surprise guest.
All
Tom
right.
from Midnight's Edge.
I saw him in the comments.
Special. I don't know about a surprise, but thank you.
So Tom,
but I'm like lick the window special.
Tom, unleash your rage. Let me hear you talk about Star Wars.
Well, let's let Mark finish. I mean, I was into what he was saying.
All I'm saying is, I guess the surprise for me for Kenobi isn't what happens to Obi-Wan Kenobi in between. Well, I know what happens to him. He looks over Luke and hangs out in the desert and doesn't do much of anything. But they're going to give him this adventure. I don't care. I just don't care. I know what his story ends up. But what I'm worried about is they cast Joel Edgerton as Owen Lars. So what kind of debauchery are they going to make him do?
Well,
I kind of assumed they're going to.
Wasn't he the guy in the prequels? Yeah, he was the same actor.
Yeah, he played him in the prequels.
So Lars is going to be there. I knew there were. I'm dreading what they're going to do to Obi-Wan, but I didn't know that I needed to also be dreading what they're going to do to Lars. So now it's double dread. But maybe
And
I'll be
Aunt Beru.
surprised. I don't think I'm going to be surprised. I think Disney is going to keep making streaming because it's kind of mindless. That's familiar. Remember that? I remember that. I remember Obi-Wan.
I remember.
Yeah.
And more Tatooine, though.
Can't
On
get
the
enough
other hand,
Tatooine, man.
Nobody can
No.
get enough Tatooine. Like they say in the very first movie, it's the most exciting place that everyone loves to be. And everyone does cool stuff on Tatooine. So
Yeah,
I
I
totally understand.
basically live in Tatooine out here in Vegas. Okay,
I want
so-
Vader. I
Mhm.
want Vader on Tatooine, so that in Vader's voice he can do like something like, "I don't like sand."
It
Yeah,
gets
that's
everywhere. Yeah.
Oh man, that would get me back. That's what would get me back.
Darth Vader talking about sand. I'm back in, everybody.
Yeah.
You don't know how coarse sand is.
Get the James Old.
If you only knew how coarse sand could be.
It
Sand.
gets everywhere, and I mean everywhere. And when
But I
you're
was saying-
wearing leather, it chafes.
All right, real quick.
What we want to know
Uh,
about the Kenobi series, what we want to know is how did he learn how to make the ooh sound?
like a bantha,
Mhm.
right? So, Chris, real quick, are there any Star Wars series that you're looking forward to as a fan? Like, is there anything that you're really interested in watching?
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed watching Filoni and Favreau play in the Kenner toy box. Mark's criticisms are valid, but I've also found it to be largely like enjoyable and
Yeah.
harmless, empty calories.
Yeah,
But it is
that's exactly
they are
right.
empty calories. There's no doubt about it. The Obi-Wan series does make me super nervous as to what they do. I really, really, really hope they don't have a direct confrontation lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. When you think about the original trilogy and what Obi-Wan says to Luke about he's more machine now than man, and he's kind of become very despondent, giving up that there was any chance of redeeming Anakin Skywalker, it might be all right to see how Obi-Wan really is confronted with what Vader has become, but I'd like to see him do it a little more indirectly and obliquely. I don't know. We'll see. The Cash and Andor series, again, to me, the best case scenario for that is empty calories, which might be all right. I thought one of the most and very few compelling moments of Disney Star Wars was right at the beginning of Rogue One, where he kills that guy in cold blood in order to further the mission of the rebellion. I thought, man, that's at least something a little different. If we're going to go back to the world we know, show us the cost of the rebellion and how it gets messy. If there's a little more of that, that might be interesting. But, again, otherwise, I think it's the best Disney has done with the IP, and it has done the least harm, in my opinion, at least so far. So it's fine.
All right, Tom, let's hear what you have to say. Dump some salt on Star Wars TV.
Well, I've been done with it for a while. I just kind of go with the motions at this point. I, like most people, was surprised how bad Book of Boba Fett really was. I checked out, I think, at the third or fourth episode. I have very little hope going forward, but we'll see, because I, too, don't trust Filoni as far as I could throw him, because I feel like he's doing a lot of things just for his own personal means, and he's using Favreau to get them. As far as Favreau goes, though, I think he genuinely wants to make good Star Wars. He's probably the only person there who does. But no, like, this whole thing is hilarious. This whole Obi-Wan thing's been a mess from the start, because Kathleen Kennedy went out there and announced the scripts are done, and we got,
I remember when she did that at D23.
It was 2018 or 19. I can't remember which. But
yeah, like I remember watching her on stage doing that and being like, ooh, I really hope that that's accurate.
Well, and that's the thing, is we've gotten conflicting reports now on what really went down, because according to her, the scripts were too bleak. And then we had the Hollywood Reporter, I think it was, article that said, what we've been trying to say to people for a while is that Favreau has a little bit more power than you think he does there. And he was the one who vetoed these scripts. Well, the first report that came out said the scripts were too much like The Mandalorian. So that tells me that somebody wasn't paying attention or reading these scripts, actually, and that's probably where Kathleen Kennedy comes into the mix. And then when, he says he wanted him to be bigger and, all this other stuff. So that tells me that Favreau has carte blanche to spend some money then, especially when it comes to Obi-Wan. And so, I mean, I've heard some good and I've heard some bad coming out of behind the scenes, more good than bad. I've heard that fans are going to squee. So that tells me, we're probably going to get a lot more member-berry stuff than anything, but we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. I kind of have my idea of where the series is going to go story-wise, but I have nothing to actually go on with that. That's just my own speculation on that part. But no, like, it's just... I think they're going to end up stretching Favreau too thin, because if this stuff is true, then that means that probably some of the other stuff that we've heard is true, and that is that he's gotten some sort of creative director role at Disney, which is outside of Lucasfilm. That means he's going to be part of other deals. And that would also make sense on the Robert Rodriguez rumor that we heard, is that the only reason he did Book of Boba Fett was because he's getting a deal for a book for Alita 2. So we'll see how this all pans out in the end. And if that happens, then that's probably proof that that was true. I think
if we get an Alita 2, then Book of Boba Fett will have been worth it, in my opinion.
And that's what I'm saying. So it was a trade-off in that respect. And that's why, I mean, I don't even blame Book of Boba Fett on Robert Rodriguez, right? I mean, because I know if you gave him carte blanche to do what he wanted with something Star Wars, we get something cool. He was just tossed an outline or a couple of scripts and said, here, do this. And then we know all of a sudden they dropped 2 episodes of Mandalorian in the middle of Book of Boba Fett because they had to clean up whatever mess they, were going to do with the next season now that they didn't have Gina Carano to work with. And I think a lot of that goes back, and we've got, a couple of other articles in the past where we know, Kathy was all worried about this blood and bones thing. And then Chapek's like, nah, we've got plenty of stuff at Lucasfilm that needs to be worried about. We don't need these other properties being added to the mix. And at that point, that's when she turned her sights back to Star Wars. And that's when things kind of got convoluted again. That's when Gina Carano doesn't get renewed. So we say it correctly, because if you say she got fired, some people lose their shit. So, but yeah.
No one on this panel would lose.
No, I don't think anybody here would. That's why I was kind of being sarcastic
it's
about it.
It's so funny that people get triggered over that, saying, like, they didn't renew her contract. It's not the same thing. Really? It's not the same thing? Shut up.
They didn't renew her contract with a vengeance, let's say.
I mean, if you watch her interview with Ben Shapiro, where she kind of talks about, like, what went down, like, she never explicitly says, like, what happened, but it's very obvious that there was people whose name might rhyme with Largo Pildalgo that wanted her gone and worked behind the scenes to take her down. And it's just a very strange situation.
Oh, he's a toxic mofo. Like, he's a name that comes up all the time when anything bad is going on. Somebody's that name pops up. He is one of the people that needs, and that's where, I wish Kathleen Kennedy, if she's not responsible for a lot of this stuff, she would pay more attention to her kids, because that's the kid who's causing all the problems right now. And she really needs to get him under control.
Have you heard whether or not he's fired?
I don't think he is. I think he's just playing with people, because he knows certain people pay attention to certain things, and he's just messing around, and he loves getting attention.
That's true. All right, guys. So we talked about the movies and the TV shows. Let's talk about the video games. So Star Wars video games have been kind of like in a weird place as long as, like, EA had the exclusive license, but EA no longer does have the exclusive license. Disney has opened it up. And for 2022, we actually got a lot of interesting kind of games on the horizon. We got the Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, which kind of goes through, like, all the movies in Lego Star Wars form. We have a game called Star Wars Hunters, which is a free-to-play, team-based multiplayer 4 versus 4 game that's going to be exclusive to the Nintendo Switch and mobile phones. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2 is on the docket. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake, which is being basically BioWare is being remade by a company called Acepher Media or something like that. They're basically taking the old game, keeping the story, keeping the voice acting, and just updating the graphics. We've got a first-person shooter coming out of Respawn Entertainment that's going to be Star Wars focused. I don't think it's going to be Battlegrounds. The rumor is it's going to be something close to, like, Dark Forces or Dark Forces 2. Ubisoft is creating an open world Star Wars game, which sounds kind of interesting. And then we've got from Quantic Dream this game called Star Wars Eclipse, which is going to be like a very narrative heavy type game set in the Star Wars universe. This is the company that did Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human, Heavy Rain, stuff like that. So it's basically a lot of quick time events taking you through like a game type thing that you can play. And finally, we've got a Star Wars strategy game in the vein of XCOM, which is being developed by Respawn and another company called Bit Reactors. So there's a lot of really interesting kind of like Star Wars video games on the horizon. Odin, are you excited about any of these?
I never really ever got into the games. When I was younger, the one game I played a lot was because this was the Star Wars I grew up with. I played the prequels featured game about pod racing. It was the pod racing game, which they
Racer.
Racer.
Very well-rated game for sure.
Yeah, we had that in college, Chris. We used to play it on the PlayStation all the time. Yeah.
And then I think they had recently released it on Switch, and I got excited about that because I was like, oh, actually, I really had fun with that game. So other than that, I did also play Star Wars Battlefront because I had gotten a PS4 to play Spider-Man and a few other games, and so I decided to pick that one up because other people were playing it, and I thought that one was pretty fun too. But in general, I've never really been into them, but from what I've been told, it really is something that I should try out, especially looking at, was it the Old Republic game, Knights of the Old Republic specifically, because there's a lot of story and lore that's attached to it that's like really good. So that's like been one thing that I've had some interest in. But in general, yeah, I mean, other than, pod racing, I really haven't had too many games that I've been like, yeah, I got to play this.
Yeah, I feel like Star Wars games are always better than like what Lucasfilm is making in terms of like the movies and TV shows, because they seem to be made by people who actually care about the property, which I know is kind of mind-blowing. Chris, do any of these games sound exciting to you?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to several of these games. I like Star Wars video games a lot. I just saw somebody in the comments mention TIE Fighter. I know flight sims have kind of fallen out of favor as a genre, but I would really love to see a what modern tech could do with an X-Wing versus TIE Fighter type game. So I'm going to keep holding out hope. I don't know. It's been several decades since X-Wing Alliance now, it feels like. But
well, they have Star Wars They have Star Wars Starfighter, which is basically X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, but that just kind of like belly flopped when it came out.
Well, it's like a real dumbed down version of it, though. And that was a multiplayer too, right? Like it was dependent on playing with other people.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that made TIE Fighter so revolutionary is you could play it entirely single player and had really good narrative storytelling, lots of cool missions. So anyway, we could probably do an entire stream on the saga of the two EA Star Wars Battlefront games and everything that went down with both of them. That is, to me, a really interesting story. It kind of captures all of the good and bad of post Lucas Star Wars, because giving EA exclusive rights to make Star Wars games for the first several years, like shutting down LucasArts and handing it over to EA, it was like the evil empire of the video gaming industry. Yeah. You had the guys at DICE and Dennis Bronval, if video game fans will know who he is. Really, you want to talk about people who loved the IP and put their heart and soul into crafting something that was true to Star Wars. You could tell they really wanted to do a great job. And then the EA corporate overlords were the exact opposite. And everything that happened with the first Battlefront and then the pay-to-win catastrophe at the launch of Battlefront 2, that could be a conversation and a 2-hour live stream unto itself. So I think it's good that they've opened it up, and I'm hopeful about the direction that it's going. Chance to play Fallen Order yet, but I've heard very, very good things from my friends who have.
Chris, when you and I were in college together, the big thing that was on the horizon was Star Wars Galaxies. Remember that? Yeah. And that was like going to be the first big Star Wars MMO. And ever since then, like we got, the Old Republic, Star Wars, The Old Republic from BioWare. I played that game for a couple years. I just found it very boring and like it wasn't very good. And they kind of gave up on, the story focus after the initial launch.
Okay.
So like I'm really looking forward to Ubisoft's open world thing, because I feel like if there was ever a playground a sandbox I wanted to play in, it's Star Wars. And if we can get like a Grand Theft Auto style video game, or even like an Assassin's Creed style video game set in the Star Wars universe, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
And it is one place where the improving technology and the greater levels of immersion you can get, I think, do allow you to continue going back to the well of the most established and familiar parts of the IP. And it doesn't feel like you're just flogging a dead horse, because, getting to play let's say the Battle of Hoth using today's technology is going to feel a hell of a lot different than playing it on Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64. So they've got that going for them. It's one place where they can go back to the established stuff that people know and love, and it doesn't feel like you just kind of squeeze blood out of the stone.
Yeah. So Tom, are there any video games on the horizon with Star Wars that you think could change the game? Because I know that, for instance, the mobile game Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, that's a game it's made over like $1 billion, and so like the IP, the Star Wars IP is alive and well in the video game industry. Are there any games that you feel like Star Wars could be the next big thing?
I like Galaga.
A Star Wars branded Galaga?
No, I really don't play a lot of games. I mean, when I get a chance to, as far as Star Wars, I think I played as far as the last one, I think I played Battlefront, and that's because it had the VR Rogue One tie-in thing, which was kind of fun. But outside of that, I've got the second one for the Xbox, and I never even played it. But no, I mean, gaming is huge, and Star Wars and gaming go well together. I mean, when you got a really good Star Wars game, they're great. When you got a bad one, they're bad. And you're right. Like outside of the industry, the video games are usually developed by other people, not Disney themselves. So you have that going for them. And it takes a lot longer to make a video game than it does a show. They probably have a little less oversight as far as like Lucasfilm goes and all that business. So they probably get away with a little bit more on that part. I mean, but if you do a good game, I mean, you can bring in a lot of money and it might reinvigorate some things, but you've also got a lot of bad will from the fans because they've killed a bunch of games that people wanted. And, you've got all the stuff that the game industries are in the midst of turmoil right now. But I mean, I have no real horse in the game race. So I kind of defer to other people when it comes to that kind of stuff. So sadly, I can't add much more than that to this conversation.
Mark, did you ever used to play the old LucasArts adventure games and stuff like that?
I remember playing the X-Wing trench run game where it was just the same couple of TIE fighters. So that's where my Star Wars gaming started. Played Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, tons and tons.
You mentioned that before, yeah.
It was a fantastic game.
Dude, Jedi Knight 2, Dark Forces 2, whatever that was, where you actually got to play as a Jedi and you could do multiplayer. Most of my college dorm days were spent playing that against other people in my dorm. It was so fun.
It was great. It was great. There was what did I play? I played the only thing that I'm looking forward to is KOTOR. I never played the original one. I don't remember why, but I never played the original KOTOR 2. But I bought the mobile game port probably 2 iPhones ago, and I played a lot of it. But it was just okay. It was a mobile game, but they update those graphics. I'm totally getting that. Otherwise, it's all Disney stuff for me.
Well,
it's tough for me to get excited about at least the story games like Fallen Order, where I know that it has to fit into a canon that I'm not really interested in.
I'll tell you all this much. I'm much more excited about the video games for Star Wars than I am about the TV shows or the movies or the books or anything going forward. So I'm actually kind of interested to see now that the license has been opened up to other companies, what they're going to do with this stuff. But, we've talked about pretty much the entire width and breadth of Star Wars. Let's go around and get everyone's final thoughts on the franchise, where it's going, what you think the pitfalls are going to be, what you hope will happen. Odin, let's start with you. What is your take on the future of the Star Wars franchise?
To be honest, until they get new leadership, and until they kind of go back to the fans, I think the future of Star Wars, at least for people who care about Star Wars, is still in the past. You know, we were showing our novels earlier. I think that is definitely a good place to go if you still are someone where maybe you've given up on Star Wars, or maybe you have little hope. Go if you've never before read any of the EU novels or anything like that. I would say do that, because I think that will be able to definitely whet your appetite there. They've actually started, one of the few good things that Disney has been doing recently is they've been going back now, and they have gone to the EU, to their, now they call it Legends novels, and have been reproducing audiobooks for them, and have actually been doing unabridged versions. So for instance, they've done X-Wing Rogue Squadron, Wedge's Gamble's coming out pretty soon as well. So they're doing all of these unabridged with I don't know, with the X-Wing novels, they're doing Mark Thompson, who's probably the best voice actor for Star Wars, like, period. Like, if you never listened to his audiobooks before, he has the voices down to a T. And it just, going back to what was being said before about the Thrawn trilogy, Mark Thompson does the voices for that too. And you just honestly feel like you're listening to Luke. You feel like you're listening to Han Solo. You feel like you're listening to these characters that are, presented in these different ways. And with these new characters, you're like, oh, these voices all sound completely fantastic. So I would say it's in the past. And one thing, because I heard it mentioned, someone mentioned about the Harmy's Despecialized Edition. So that's another thing I think, if you want to get really passionate about, like, the old films, like the OG stuff, the way it was really intended. You have Harmy's Despecialized Edition on Blu-ray, which you can get access to. Great stuff. But even more exciting is, I don't know if you've heard of Project 4K. Mm-hmm. So there's Project 4K 77. So it's Project 4K 77 on Star Wars. Yeah. They've also got the Silver Screen Edition, which is pretty cool. There's also these things where it's like the Renegade Edition, Empire Strikes Back. This is where basically it's their initial scan of the original 35 millimeter. So it's like dirty and disgusting, but it looks like it looks like film, so it looks really authentic. It's cool. And they actually just finished cleaning up and doing digitizing Empire. They are still waiting to put out like a full official release for it, but I actually just during the process of this was downloading to see what they have for Empire so far. But this is the kind of stuff you can get passionate about. This is the kind of stuff you can get excited about, and it's in the past.
Yeah, I can't wait for 4K 80.
Yes.
All right, Chris, what are your final thoughts on the Star Wars franchise going forward?
Hey, man, we're all Homer Simpson, and for this audience, appropriately enough, Kathleen Kennedy's the devil, pinch our nose, keep feeding us donuts, right? Like, that's what it is. You know my opinion, Matt. The more you make, the smaller it gets. Disney bought two huge pop cultural IPs, and I feel like they're going in opposite directions. Marvel had a huge audience, but was ultimately like a niche property, which has grown to be broadly popular. Star Wars was a property that is broadly popular and is destined to collapse down to a niche property. I think that's just is what it is. That 50%, or I think probably ultimately fewer of the fans who will just buy anything with Star Wars stamped on it, I think ultimately that is going to be the parameters of the fan base in the future. Because again, like, just look at the themes that have come up over the course of this conversation over 2 hours. We all just feel increasingly exhausted and disillusioned and alienated with it. And, at this point, when we're talking about the movies, I think we all have lost confidence that this is going to be made well, right? We're just not expecting a good product. So, yeah, we may selectively watch a show on Disney Plus or play certain video games. But I just don't see a future for Star Wars as a brand where the audience is expanding. I think it's just going to continue to contract.
Mark, what are your final thoughts on the Star Wars franchise?
I echo Odin and Chris. I would say for newer fans, or for fans who got drawn into Disney, or just older fans who never got into the EU stuff, there's so much there. There is so much good stuff there, and it's Luke as you thought he would be, reestablishing the Jedi Order It's Leia as you thought she would be, building up a new republic and dealing with that, and her and Han building a family and having kids and them growing up, and then things get a little grimdark with new Jedi Order. But you'll get there. You'll see Odin. Very grim dark, very heavy. But there's so much good stuff. I'm so cynical and burned with Disney that I'm afraid even if they did something good, I would go into it with my expectations so low and be so hypercritical and nitpicky. It's going to be hard for me to enjoy it. So for me, the future of Star Wars is Dune. And I hope Dune 2 is amazing and they make like 10 more movies. I really liked Dune. Dune made me realize how badly Disney screwed up Star Wars. Because this should be a golden age. Infinite resources to make tons of content. And
the special effects allow you to do anything you want.
Anything. There's just no limits. And I just think it's going to be, this is going to be a dark spot in the entire history of cinema. People will study what Disney did to the Star Wars IP as a horrifying cautionary tale for producers, for directors, for writers, for everybody. So, I think the property can come back, but not under Disney. And maybe it will. Maybe Disney will, spend 10 years just letting it kind of hang out dormant, take all the ancillary rights and let money come in and finally decide it's worth more if we sell to whoever, Warner Brothers. And then maybe I'll pick it back up again. But I'm pretty burned out, like a lot of people, like a lot of old Star Wars fans.
Tom, you assume they won't own Warner Brothers by then, which is not a safe bet.
I don't know.
Tom, what are your final thoughts on the Star Wars franchise and where it's going?
Well, you're never going to gain back the type of fan support you had years ago. At least not anytime soon, until Kathleen Kennedy and a few other people are out the door, at least Hidalgo and a few others like we were talking about earlier. But outside of that, it's one of those properties that no matter how bad they muck it up, it's like one of those businesses that, I'm trying to think of an example. I know there's a couple, but I couldn't offhand, but where they basically did a bunch of advertising when they first came out, but they become so big that they don't really have to advertise anymore, right? Like they're just part of what we use in our daily lives. Star Wars is kind of like that as a franchise. Like you're always going to have that core fan base of people that are going to consume Star Wars no matter what. We see it in Star Trek and a few other places. It does go away after a while. There's only so many left when it's all said and done. But Star Wars is big enough that it'll sustain itself at some point. But at what point does it just become this dead thing on life support? That's a good question. It's going to need something to reinvigorate it and bring some blood in it. I don't know if Favreau is it necessarily, but it'll be interesting to see in the next few years. Like, I've kind of just detached myself from Star Wars anyway. I've always seen it as like this relationship. The original films were the initial, high school, love, the original big boom. And then, years later you have the prequel. So it's like you're getting back together with that high school sweetheart. And sure, it was nice, but it wasn't as good as it was the first time. So you guys went both your separate ways and everything was fine. Well, then next thing you know, 20 years later, shit, we're getting back together again. And you think it's going to even be better than before because all the things that you had before are coming back. So it's like, you feel like it's going to be even better. And then it was even bigger letdown in the end because the bitch is a complete psycho. So you're like in this place where
I love your analogies, Tom.
You've had to just kind of divorce yourself from it at this point. So it's almost like me watching this chick I used to date and her crazy new life. And I'm just like, yep, go ahead and have your crazy new life over there. I'm fine over here. And I kind of just feel detached from Star Wars at this point like that.
So real quick, we got a $9.99 super chat from Valiant Renegade, swinging through to pay respects and offer support. Cheers to my friends on St. Paddy's Day. Thank you, Valiant Renegade. Really appreciate the support and the respects, and happy St. Patty's Day to you too. I hope you're wearing green. I didn't even know it was St. Patty's Day. I kind of, out here in my little bubble, just kind of forgot about it. Anyway, guys, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on the socials and where they can follow you and check out your own live streams, stuff like that. Odin, where can people check you out?
Yeah, you can check me out over at OMB Reviews on YouTube. I also back up my videos to Odyssey and Rumble. And I'm also present on Minds.com, Gab, the Twitter, pretty much all of the alt-tech social media. I am currently number 149,000 in waiting for Truth Social. So at some point I'll be on there.
Yeah, I'm a dirty Android user. I can't even get on that. Real quick, yeah. Valiant Renegade, $1.99. Again, happy Lent to a Jesuit brother on the panel, AMDG. Thank you, Valiant Renegade. Happy Lent to you as well. Chris, where can people find you on the socials?
Yeah, man, I'm not going to do all those plugs. Tell
them about your podcast at least.
Yeah, nobody in your audience cares about Penn State football. Look, I'm just going to use my time to encourage everybody to try to be a little bit nicer to each other, even strangers on the internet.
We don't do that here, Chris.
Yeah, I know. It's my plea into the void.
All right. Well, Mark, where can people donate to your political campaign?
I'm not actually running yet. But I did come up with a new party because I'm just so disgusted with everybody who keeps spending money that we don't have. In which case, why are you taking my taxes if you're just going to spend money you don't have anyway? It's called the Ent Party. Like ENT, like Tolkien.
Very good. Where can they register?
You can't yet. It's like my pinned tweet. What you could do if you would like to. So everyone talks about, well, if you don't like it, make your own. So I did write a couple of books. One of them is called Leviathan, and the sequel's called Fallen. And this one actually won a hot dang award for real. Won first place in the Independent Book Publishers Award, Ben Franklin, and I didn't know how big a deal that was, but it was a big enough deal for my publisher to pop champagne, which I got none of. And then I just found out this one is a finalist for this year's.
And you can find them on Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, $7.99, little paperbacks. It's half Angel Giants riding dinosaurs, and the best review I ever got, which is kind of my goal for the whole thing, was like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, but with dinosaurs. So, if that sounds cool.
I'm intrigued with dinosaurs.
So
I like dinosaurs. There's so many cool dinosaurs.
Just do a search on Amazon for R.M. Huffman. You can
find if you look up Huffman Leviathan or Huffman Fallen. Can you see those? And the covers are pretty sweet. Anyway, that's that. And then Twitter, I just, I get bored. I get angry at people. I get on my things.
You like to poke the wampa.
I like to poke the wampa. I do sometimes. Sometimes I don't.
All right. And Tom from Midnight's Edge, thank you for slumming it on our chipsy little channel here.
Oh, whatever.
Why don't you tell me you?
Well, you can find me on Midnight's Edge After Dark. I like to migrate around to different places like this, hanging out with fun people. So, yeah. Glad to be here.
And I'd also like to just shout out in the chat, Gimpy G Gaming. Gimpy, it's good having you in the chat, buddy. I did a live stream with Gimpy and David Hewlett a little while ago talking about podcasting. And speaking of David Hewlett, I just want to let you guys know that next week, instead of our normal Thursday slot, we're actually going to be doing a live stream on Wednesday with special guest Stargate Atlantis actor David Hewlett. Him and I are going to be talking with an NFT expert by the name of Crypto Stash. You can find him on YouTube. Just search for Crypto Stash. He's a metaverse gaming and NFT expert, and we're going to be talking to him about the application of NFTs on YouTube, podcasting, movies, and TV shows. And we're going to try to figure out what's going to be the future of entertainment and crypto and NFTs and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that type of thing, come by on Wednesday around 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And we're going to have a nice little conversation, just me, David Hewlett, and Crypto Stash. And we hope you guys will join us in the chat to ask your questions and kind of find out about where the future of entertainment is going there. Anyway, big thanks to my expert panel on here. As always, you guys were fantastic. Had a great time talking Star Wars with you. And as always, stay salty, my friends. But before we go, it wouldn't be a Star Wars stream unless we ended it like this.
I will teach you how to ride. I will teach you like a panther. Yes, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. Like a panther, 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 like a panther. Find other panthers, make baby panthers. You're free to roam the dune sea. Go like a panther, like a baby panthers, like a panther, like a panther, like a panther, like a panther, like a panther. Go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. Like a panther, 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 like a panther. Find other panthers, make baby panthers. You're free to roam the dune sea. Go like a panther.